costly to get rid of him. So I hear what you're saying, Roger, and I know that there have been players in the past that I have probably been on board for, more so than maybe you would think, but it's usually in a low-risk environment. I don't want Aiyuk with his contract. I don't want to be tied into this dude for 2 years at $27.5 million base salary and real pain if they were to move on from him because he's a wingnut. No, I want a total low-risk, high-incentive deal, low base pay that basically is not guaranteed. You know, it gets paid 1/17th at a time. You know, that's how base salaries in the NFL get paid. They don't get paid, from February through August. They get paid during the season. Your base salary gets paid over the 17 weeks that you play, or over the 18-week season, because you have a bye week in there. And you get 1/18th of your base salary in a paycheck every week. That's how it works. I say that's how it works as if I know for sure. Maybe they get, 2 games worth of pay every 2 weeks. That's direct deposited. I have no idea how that works logistically, but I'm not up for bringing Brandon Aiyuk and his current contract after giving up a 6th-round pick in next year's draft. I'm not up for that. But please understand, Roger and everybody else, because I do think that there is a little bit of some ignorance when it comes to him as a player. If he is, at 28 years old, what he was, and I'm not saying that that's not, a significant if, although many players have come back from knee injuries and been even stronger. Like if he's physically ready, the knee is not an issue. And you're 3 years removed. Remember, you're really 2 seasons removed from him last playing. He got hurt early in the 2024 season. So if he's back for the 2026 season, it's really 2 seasons since he's played. But if he's right physically, I'm telling you, this dude is really good. He is the juice that you're looking for offensively. He's that, true difference maker offensively that right now we only have 2 of. The quarterback and Terry McLaurin. Those are the 2 difference-making offensive players. Dan Quinn, when he was on with me a month and a half ago, I said, what are you looking for? This was before free agency started. He said, I'm looking for somebody who can really wreck the game defensively, and get after the quarterback and create, high-impact plays. And I'm looking for somebody on offense that can score from anywhere. They only have 2 players right now. I don't know, maybe Krosky Merritt is another. We certainly saw it against Dallas at the end of the season when he took off 76 yards. He's got some explosive game, changing ability. He also has helped out the other team on occasion by putting the ball on the ground. But at wide receiver, you have Terry McLaurin, and we don't know what else, really. If you really want more juice to the offense, the Brandon Aiyuk that I remember is that. He's all that. He's elite as a wide receiver if you get the player that played in 2023. And again, we're not talking about a 35-year-old. We're not talking about DeAndre Hopkins at the end of his career. We're talking about a guy who's had 1 serious injury and a serious relationship issue. You got to get all that cleared. We can't do that from these seats. The team has to do that. I'd like to think that Adam Peters and Jaden Daniels, 2 people who know the player very well, can really come to a conclusion on risk reward. I don't want to take on, Roger, a headache. I don't, no matter how talented he is. I don't want that. But he was not a problem before the summer of 2024 and the protracted contract negotiation with the 49ers. And from that moment, it's all gone downhill. He clearly appears to be immature professionally. There's no doubting that. By the way, that's probably 40-50% of the league. But I definitely have this sense in interacting with so many of you that You guys just think he's a guy. Like, yeah, he's good. No. He's really good. He's better than our guy and was at the end of 2023. I mean, it's a 1A, 1B situation. I'm not saying that there's massive difference, but Aiyuk is a real difference maker at the position. And the two of them together, you now have a top, what would it be? Would it be top 5 in terms of pairings at wide receiver? It'd be in the conversation. It'd be no worse than top 10. And right now, it's a weak position room on your roster. So, yeah, I'm interested. I'm willing to take on, a player that's had problems in his current situation, but I'm only willing to do that if Adam Peters and the people that need to do the work on the player think that it's absolutely worth the risk because the reward's so great and that they do it in an environment that is super low risk. You have to do it that way. You cannot just say, well, the 49ers aren't going to cut him until August 31st, and let's trade for him. Let's take on the contract. We've got the room. We can eat it if it doesn't work out, but no. No picks, just signing him after he gets released and not restructuring, but signing him to a deal that is $6, $7, $8 million for 1 year, high incentives based on performance. And then if he's really, really good next year, then worst case, you franchise tag him going into 2027. I'm for that. Tommy and I were talking on my podcast yesterday, and Tommy said, is there a cutoff date for Brandon Aiyuk? Like, if the 49ers are going to sit on this until the last moment in which they can, which is August 31st, their next payment per his current contract, I think it's a roster bonus. It may be something else, but it's not due based on the reporting until September 1st. So they could conceivably wait. And again, I said this yesterday, and somebody sent me a video of somebody in San Francisco saying the 49ers are embarrassing themselves. They should just release him. This is terrible to treat a player like that. That's not the way I would feel if I were a 49ers fan. If I had just signed this guy after a long, contentious contract negotiation in the summer of 2024 to one of the biggest deals in the game, and he got hurt, and then he went AWOL and was incredibly immature, and yes, not the sharpest tool in the tool shed to give away $30 to $40 million in voided guarantees. I would not want my team to do him any favors, or more importantly, any competing team any favors. Why would they want Brandon Aiyuk if they still believe in him as a player, as a talent, and I bet they do, but they've had it with him. Obviously, the damage is not repairable between the two sides. They wanted at one point during the season, they wanted him to show up to the facility. They wanted him to potentially play at the end of last year when they were, in the playoff mix, and more than in the playoff mix, had a really good record and needed him. But he had zero interest in that. And then they essentially, they separated. And now they're not officially divorced. That'll come when they release him. But they are separated right now for all intents and purposes. But why would the 49ers do him a favor? More importantly, do Washington a favor. They're in Washington's conference. Why would they want Washington to benefit from having him for 2 months leading up to the season or a month leading up to the season versus a few days before the season begins? I think that's an absurd take. If I'm a 49ers fan, there's nothing embarrassing about holding on to him. The distractions are always overrated, always inflated by media people. Cooley used to tell us all the time, had no idea that that's what you guys were talking about. Inside the building, those things were never an issue. There can be inside the building issues caused by outside attention. I doubt this is one that would rise to the level of being a major distraction for the players in that locker room. Sure, Kyle's going to get asked about it. John Lynch is going to get asked about it. He got asked about it the other day and said, no, we're not releasing him. They seem pretty adamant. If I were a 49ers fan, I'd say, great. Don't do anybody else any favors. If we can wait until August 31st to release him, if we can wait until training camp is done, the preseason is done across the league, which, by the way, creates another opportunity for maybe a long shot trade. Somebody loses a receiver or two and is desperate. 49ers should hold on to him as long as they can. Somebody could get desperate and send him a pick at the end of camp, after the preseason. Yeah, I don't know who the person was. I forget. Somebody sent this video of, I think it was the San Francisco talk show host, saying that the Niners are embarrassing themselves in this process. They're treating the player poorly, etc. It's competitive, man. I'm not giving Washington or anybody else an opportunity to have him for, a long period of time to get him ready for the season. Why would I do that? It doesn't make any sense. There are situations where you want to take care of a player, where you want to treat the player so that it works out in his best interest, but not this player with their relationship. It reminds me of the Albert Hainsworth days. So many of you, I remember this so vividly, just wanted them to release Albert Hainsworth. Stop making him look bad. Stop doing, this is making the team look bad. Look, it was hard for the team to ever make itself look worse because it was just always perceived as low rent. Mike Shanahan got a 5th-round pick from Belichick for Albert Hainsworth. If he had taken your advice with him or with Donovan McNabb, that was the other one. Just release Donovan McNabb. I mean, do right by him. He wouldn't even wear a wristband during the games. They asked him to do that. He wouldn't do that. Look, he was set in his ways. Probably a bad acquisition. It wasn't one that Mike wanted. It was a Dan Bruce, concoction. And what happened? They ended up dealing him to Minnesota for a 6th rounder that became Alfred Morris. There are situations where it probably is in the best interest of the franchise to treat the player at a level that's highly respectful, because it will look bad if you don't. I don't think the rest of the league is going to view the 49ers, if they hold on to Aiyuk for the rest of the summer, hoping to get a pick before August 31st, or in worst case, not giving a competitor an advantage of having him for longer than they need to. I just don't see that as a problem for them. They may have other issues. I know a lot of their contracts and contract negotiations over the years have, gone on and on. But you know what also is true in most of the cases? The players end up staying there and signing there. Nick Bosa, Trent Williams, George Kittle, Brandon Aiyuk, and others that have had long contract negotiations that have been reportedly contentious, but ultimately they get done and the players stay there. Fred Warner, they like the organization. They like the coaching staff for sure. They are well coached year in and year out. Yeah, in terms of a cutoff date, though, answering that question, which Tommy asked me, I'd have to, part of me believes that a coaching staff is going to be like, just get him in here a week or two before the season starts and we're good. And if it's, September 1st, the actual opener will be Sunday, I think September 10th or something like that. We'll get him up to speed. This guy is probably intelligent enough when it comes to football to certainly, thrive in a Kyle Shanahan-based system. And there are going to be some similarities with the system he'll be in. He knows the quarterback. Yes, they're far removed from playing with one another. But I don't know if there's part of me wants to say training camp and then let's do something else. Let's go get Stephon Diggs if he is legally ready to play football. Let's, Juwan Jennings. By the way, Ben reported, Standing reported that Washington has had interest in Juwan Jennings, but it's more of a cursory interest level. So right now, I think the Juwan Jennings situation is that he has asked, and he and his agent, I think it's Drew Rosenhaus, has asked for too much money. May end up wanting to stay in San Francisco. If he's going to, not make what he thought he could make on the open market, he may want to stay in San Francisco. That'd be another example of players actually like it there. But that I thought that was interesting. I mean, Juwan Jennings would not be Brandon Aiyuk in terms of the playmaking boost, but Juwan Jennings is a real solid football player all the way around, and you plug him in at number 2, as the opposite, outside receiver to Terry. And he is, as Jay Gruden has said many times over the years, Juwan Jennings is the best blocking wide receiver he's ever seen. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Roger, for that. Yes, I'm definitely in on Brandon Aiyuk, but with several ifs. If they deem him to be physically and mentally ready, and if you get him on a deal that's highly incentivized, where the team can walk at any moment, can send him home at any moment, and there's no ramifications financially to the cap, to their budget. That's the way I would see it. But I'm telling you, this player, if you got that player, he's really good. Number 2 PFF wide receiver in 2023 behind Tyreek Hill. And take the PFF, ranking for whatever it's worth. But he was really good that year. He is a separator. He doesn't drop passes. He's great after the catch. The idea of having that player opposite Terry McLaurin, they'd be really dynamic offensively. And look, I think they can be dynamic offensively even if they don't add Aiyuk, even if they don't add, more offensive playmaking ability. I do. We saw it in 24. But that would be a home run if he's mentally and physically ready to go, and you do it on a highly incentivized deal. All right. I think we already did the Brandon Aiyuk thing on the phones yesterday, didn't we, Max? I mean, that was all the way back to yesterday. Didn't we take calls on Aiyuk?
Yeah, it was what do they need to do, and we kind of expanded
what do they
a
need to add?
more. But yeah,
I don't see where the downside of adding him on an incentivized contract would be. Why wouldn't you do that? Why wouldn't you just, take literally a zero to very low risk swing? That's the way I would view, doing it, and hopefully they would see it the same way. I would assume they see it the same way, although watch us get shocked with, a report, in the next week or two, Washington, trades a future 6th or conditional late round pick for Brandon Aiyuk. If they did that, man, you'd have to think they know the state he's in, and it is superb, because you don't do that with this player based on the last year and a half. Nobody's done what he's done. It's unprecedented what he's done in terms of walking away from between $30 and $40 million when all he had to do was show up at the facility a few times a month to get his knee checked. That is not good judgment. I totally agree with that. I totally agree that is a red flag, especially when you consider that clearly he's in the wrong because nobody has gone after that money. Not him, not his agent, not his lawyers, not the NFL Players Association. It's gone. Maybe they'll go after it later. I don't know. But there has not been any pushback, publicly anyway, to having that much money voided and not paid from his contract. That was guaranteed for injury money. Voided. Rarely do you see that. And if you do see it, you don't see it without a fight to get it back. I want to get to a what do you got that's pretty interesting, even though it's completely off NFL and football topic. I'll explain next. So the World Cup begins in about a month and a half. It is in North America. Canada has locations, obviously the U.S. and Mexico as well. And the U.S., their first game in the World Cup is scheduled for June 12th at SoFi in Los Angeles. They're playing Paraguay. And right now, they are having a very difficult time selling that game out. The capacity for the venue for soccer is listed at 69,650. According to multiple reports, there are 40,934 tickets sold at this point. So basically close to 30,000 tickets unsold for the event, for the U.S. opener in the World Cup at SoFi against Paraguay. This is alarming to FIFA and to World Cup officials who always see the host country's games sell out easily. What's being blamed for it? Well, number one is the price of tickets. I don't know if you guys have seen this. I know I talked about it briefly. I did, right, Max, when I told
you mentioned you were going to be in and around I am
going to the World Cup final on July 19th at the Meadowlands. My brother, who lives in Costa Rica, has for 30 plus years, is coming back to the States with his son. They've gotten tickets to 3 or 4 games leading up to the final in New York. They're going to go to, I think the games they're going to are all at the Meadowlands. Philly's got games. Foxborough has games on the East Coast. Washington does not. Remember, FIFA was mortified when they saw the FedEx Field situation and said no. And this would have been an incredible city to be a World Cup host city. But I mentioned, I mean, it took me zero time to respond. Yes, I'm interested. He had an extra ticket. Of course, I want to go. That is going to be. Did I mention this? That the tickets on StubHub for the World Cup final, the best seats are going for between $60,000 and $70,000. $60,000 and $70,000 for the best seats for the World Cup final. I told my brother, if you don't mind, send me my ticket in advance, and I'll just meet you at the game. If we don't run into each other, it's I ran into other people. I mean, I'm going to tell him to sell the 3 tickets. That's insanity if you can get that. Now, apparently the seats we have for the World Cup final are just decent. They're not the best seats, but still, I mean, the StubHub all aftermarket ticket sales for this World Cup event over the month and a half, 5 weeks or whatever it is, you would not believe it. Like, I'm looking at the U.S. Paraguay opener at SoFi right now. It's not sold out. 30,000 seats available. And they have what they call Category 1, Category 2, Category 3, and Category 4 seats right now. And so that it goes from best seats to worst seats. Right now, the actual price for a ticket, not aftermarket, but the actual price is about $1,900 for the best seats, about $1,100 for the worst seats. So there is blame on the price of the tickets as to why they're not sold out. But I'm looking at StubHub right now. If you don't have access to buying them at face value, the aftermarket prices are insane. For like midfield, the lower, bowl at SoFi, there's 6 left if you want them at $43,000. That would be embarrassing, wouldn't it? Wouldn't it be embarrassing if you got to the U.S.'s first game in the World Cup and they're a host and there are empty seats everywhere? They didn't sell it out. Now, the other countries, they're doing well selling tickets for a lot of the other games because, obviously, like Mexico, South Africa is the first game on June 11th. The U.S.-Paraguay game is on the 12th, and Canada also hosts a game in Toronto on the 12th as well. So the U.S., Canada, Mexico are the 3 host countries. Mexico opens up the World Cup at home in Mexico City. That'll be insane against South Africa. Canada against Bosnia Herzegovina on June 12th, and then the U.S. and Paraguay on the 12th as well. But like there are games like I think every game involving Brazil, Germany, Spain, these games they're very hard to get tickets for, no matter where they are. Like I think Spain plays their first game in Atlanta sometime in mid-June, and it's impossible. In fact, I'd like to see the tickets for that one in Mercedes-Benz. Yeah, not many tickets left, and not a lot on StubHub left either. So there are certain countries that are just going to do very well. Germany, apparently, the Netherlands, Spain, Brazil, Argentina. Is Messi playing? You're more of a soccer guy than I am. Is Messi playing in the World Cup?
See, I'm not even sure. Because I remember back in the day, like before the last World Cup, he announced that he was retiring from international play, and then he came back and won. So it's kind of Messi's fate is a little bit up in the air. I think he's gonna be in, but I'm again not 100% sure. Captaincy. Okay, so it looks like he is gonna end up playing, but
he is.
Yeah. So a lot of
Ronaldo will play for Portugal, right?
I would assume.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean those guys are kind of a given, but it's the World Cup's a little bit of a cluster this year.
Why?
Because I mean ticket prices are outrageous, number one, but that comes with any World Cup in general. But a lot of the stadiums here in America are a little bit hard to get to. Like a lot of these how many games are
what's hard to get to?
Well, MetLife Stadium in New York and New Jersey, they are charging $100 a train ticket to get to the stadium.
Really?
Yeah. New Jersey Transit announced that, and people were not happy.
I mean, I'm looking at the list of stadiums that are hosting. Foxborough's always a pain in the you-know-what to get to.
They have Foxborough
everything else
Boston.
is pretty accessible, but you're talking about the cost of transportation to the stadium.
Not only that, but also I believe I've heard somewhere that FIFA is putting the kibosh on tailgating for a lot of these games.
No tailgating? Is tailgating a big thing for soccer fans or not?
I don't think so, but in this capacity with these kinds of stadiums and the American culture of tailgating before sporting events, I feel like it's a really important thing that I don't think FIFA should be putting the kibosh on, especially with how the inaccessibility of some of these stadiums like Foxborough, like MetLife, like San Francisco Bay Area. So people are going to be traveling to San Francisco and staying in San Francisco and then finding out that they have to travel all the way down to San Jose to make it to the game. So it's been a little bit of a cluster just, regarding scheduling and getting people to these places. So that might also have something to do with it as well.
You got to sell out the World Cup.
You can't not
in the U.S., especially in Los Angeles. I mean, you got to do that. I think I was reading that places like Seattle and Kansas City that are host cities are doing very well, that those are big soccer fan cities. Like the MLS teams in those markets draw very well. Doesn't the DC United, they draw well here?
Yeah.
At Audi
and
Field.
The Spirit get hella crowds all the time when I'm down here in the Navy Yard. I see people decked out in Spirit gear all the time when there are games. Oh, by the way, on the tailgating thing, doing a little bit of extra research, you will be able to tailgate in Foxborough. So that one is confirmed that they have reversed the decision there. But I believe it's going to be venue-specific rules. So FIFA doesn't have a blanket ban, but it's going to be up to the stadiums whether people are allowed to tailgate or not.
Dallas is a host for World Cup games. Is that capacity going to be 100,000 plus? A soccer field takes up more seats than a football field does. So maybe the capacity is less than what it typically is for Jerry World. Here's the list
grass in there too.
The list of venues: Dallas, Mexico City, Meadowlands, Atlanta, KC, Houston, San Francisco Bay Area. That'll be in Santa Clara. SoFi in LA, Philly, Seattle, Boston, Miami, Vancouver, Monterrey in Mexico, Guadalajara, and Toronto. Toronto will be really, really good. I'll tell you what, looking at some of these places now, Dallas is indoor and temperature controlled. Mexico City is not, although Mexico City with the altitude never gets super, super hot. And if it is, it's more of a dry heat. But Meadowlands in the summer, Kansas City in the summer, Houston's indoors, Philly, Boston, Miami outdoors at Hard Rock. Man, there could be some real heat issues for some of these games. We'll get a lot of flopping. In the heat games, we'll get a lot of exaggerated injuries. I can't wait for that. That's always my favorite part of the World Cup is the guys that get their toes stepped on and start rolling around like they got shot. I'm looking forward to it. I mean, it gives us something in June and July when there's nothing else going on. Who's televising this thing? It's got to be Fox, right?
Yeah, Fox usually has the broadcasting rights to the World
Fox
Cup.
and Peacock.
Correctly. Yes.
So
as well.
Fox, FS1, and then Peacock look like the networks that will. So that when I see Peacock, I'm assuming that that's not NBC over the air. That's Peacock.
I would largely assume that they're going to guide everybody to Peacock for that. Yeah.
Yeah. And the U.S. game on Friday, June 12th is 9 p.m. Eastern, and it will be on Fox. I have no idea. Oh, I'm looking at a line right now. The U.S. is a slight favorite, minus 110 favorite. And by the way, the over-under for almost every single game is 2.5. Literally, I'm looking through all these lines. It's 2.5 for almost every single game. Oh, here's a 4.5. Germany is their first game is 4.5, and then a 1.5. Ivory Coast and Ecuador. The over/under is 1.5.
Who's Germany playing that game?
Hold on, I just saw the over/unders. It looks like they play the net. No, they don't play the Netherlands.
That wouldn't have shocked me.
Tunisia looks like.
All right. Well, we're expecting a shellacking then.
Yeah. Iran is in the World Cup.
That they are.
They play their first game on Monday, June 15th in SoFi, Los Angeles against New Zealand. It's kind of fascinating, the World Cup. I think that I like the World Cup just because the rest of the world is just so important to. So important to. It's too bad we're not hosting, now that it's here or a month and a half away, because I know that this is a good soccer market. The international part of our city and, a lot of the 20-somethings, they love, a good party. They love a good watch party around soccer. Tommy always calls 20-something soccer fans the sport for non-sports fans. I don't know if that's true, but it's too bad DC's not hosting. All right. They still have time. Still got a month and a half to sell out the U.S. opener on June 12th at SoFi in the World Cup. So the NCAA tournament is expanding to 76 teams. We'll explain how it will work next. The NCAA tournament years ago during the UCLA reign under John Wooden had 28 teams. At one point, it expanded to 32. Then it expanded to 40 and then to 52. That was a big deal. And from 52, it then went to 64. That happened in 1985, and it was at 64 for a long period of time until they added an additional, 4 teams to get to a 68-team field, which then created the first 4 games on Tuesday and Wednesday night, where you get a 16 versus a 16 on both nights, but then you also got 2 at-larges facing off to be an 11 seed or a 12 seed in the main draw come the following Thursday. Well, the NCAA tournament is on the verge of expanding again. There are some formalization issues and votes to be taken, but the final steps, or they have reached just the final steps before expanding both the men's and women's basketball tournaments to 76 teams from the current field of 68. So it's going to be interesting to see how they do this. I mean, I have a sense of how they'll do it because there's really only one way mathematically to do it. If you want to get to 64, the actual bracket that everybody fills out for the first round on Thursday and Friday. And that is, you've got to have 24 teams play prior to Thursday and Friday. You've got to have 24 of your 76 teams that would produce 12 winners, and that would get you to a 64-team clean bracket for the first round of the tournament on Thursday and Friday. Let me just say this. I'm not a fan of this. I'm not, I was okay with the expansion to 68 and adding a couple of at-large teams and creating an at-large night on Tuesday and Wednesday night as part of the first 4. Because the 2-16 versus 16 games are not very exciting in Dayton. But, a couple of those at-large games over the years have been good. The game this year with Miami of Ohio and SMU was very exciting. But now we're going to get, more likely than not, 12 games, 24 teams on Tuesday and Wednesday night before the main draw. I think it's too many teams. I think it's watered down. I think it makes it almost too easy to make it to the tournament. I think in many ways it minimizes the regular season even more. Now, some would argue, and it's not a terrible argument, that with that many berths available, it actually makes the regular season even more important because you get to the end of the year and you've got more critical games for at-large spots, in the regular season or in the conference tournaments. We've seen the conference tournaments sort of de-emphasized by committees that have voted on the at-large field. In the men's tournament. I really can't speak to the women's tournament. But I don't love it. You're going to get teams in there that you're going to have a lot of the teams in there that have sub 500 records in their conferences. They'll have legitimately barely winning records for the season. And, when you have a season like that, I'm a college basketball fan of a specific team. I think I can speak to this because, Maryland is a basketball first school, and that's where the passion for most Maryland fans, gets directed. When you're in the midst of just an okay season, when you get to the end of that, you're kind of over it. Like Indiana's fan base this year, they didn't even want Indiana to make the tournament with the way they were playing at the end of the year. It's not like super exciting to be 16 and 15 and playing, a Big Ten tournament game on a Tuesday night for perhaps an at-large berth. It's just not a good team. You're not going anywhere. And yes, it's one and done and anything can happen. But I'm not a big fan of the expansion. I like the way it is. Now, it will create more opportunities for more basketball, more one and dones on Tuesday and Wednesday night. What you'll likely get, this has not been spelled out in any of the stories that I've read so far, so this is a guess. But if it is 76, the only way to create a clean bracket for Thursday and Friday and the first round at 64 is to have 24 teams play. So 52 will not have to play on Tuesday and Wednesday night. 24 teams will have to play. 24 teams playing means there are 12 games spread over 2 nights, Tuesday and Wednesday night. That is 6 games a night. I don't think we're going to get day games on Tuesday or Wednesday. I don't think they'll want the day game situation for Thursday and Friday for March Madness is kind of sacred. You're not going to add to that on Tuesday and Wednesday. You're not going to put Thursday and Friday in jeopardy playing day games on Tuesday and Wednesday. The way it'll work, I would imagine, is just like Thursday night or Friday night works. Typically you have 4 games in a window, 8 games a night, 8 games during the day, but you'll have 6 games. You'll have 3 games in the early window. There will be a game that will tip off at 6:40. There will be a game that'll tip off at 7 and a game that'll tip off at 7:20. And then the last 3 of the night, it'll be, 9:45, 10, and 10:15. And that's, you'll get 6 games in 2 different windows with, hopefully staggered start times on 3 different networks. It'll be CBS, it'll be TNT, it'll be True TV, or some combination of those, TBS included. And that's the way it'll work. So instead of, 2 games on Tuesday and Wednesday night, you're going to get actually 6 games on Tuesday and Wednesday night. It will make it much more active, on Tuesday and Wednesday night. It will certainly increase the wagering on Tuesday and Wednesday night. You're likely to get bigger name teams, more big conference matchups. Now, part of the expansion, they have said, is to, get at-larges in from the mid-major conferences and add to that portion of college sports. But ultimately, there's going to be a committee and they're going to determine, team A versus team B, and it's not going to have any sort of weight to it that one's in a big conference and one is in a small conference. It'll be resume comparison time. So if you're into that at 76, 6 games on Tuesday night, 6 games on Wednesday night, I mean, I don't think you're going to get a bracket expansion. It's too clean at 64. I think it's going to be one of those where, when you're filling out your brackets prior to Thursday, there's going to be, instead of 1 11 versus 11 game on Tuesday night or Wednesday night, there are going to be more of those. There's going to be a 10 versus a 10 and 11 versus, and you're going to have to fill in just, the winner versus the winner of the play-in game, or the first, it'll now be called the first 24, I guess, or the first 12, because there will be 12 games. I think that's the only way to do the bracket. Maybe they'll come up with something more elaborate, but I think the thing that has to be protected, the thing that is sacred when it comes to this sport, is a 64-team bracket that starts on Thursday with first-round games. You've got 32 first-round games, 16 on Thursday, 16 on Friday. So to make that happen, you've got to play 12 games with a 76-team field on Tuesday and Wednesday night, 6 each. 6 games Tuesday night, 6 games Wednesday night. I mean, when we get there, I'm not going to hate it. I'm going to watch. It'll be, March Madness, just more madness earlier in the week. But I don't really love, the idea of, going, if you just go to the standings from this past season, it just doesn't make sense that, a Wake Forest at 18 and 17 and 7 and 11 in the ACC somehow now is in the field. A Stanford at 20 and 13, 9 and 9. Or did they make the field? Stanford may have made the field. You get in the Big Ten. I'm more familiar with the Big Ten season. I mean, a Washington team, or an Indiana team, they were 18 and 14, 9 and 11 in the Big Ten. They did not make the tournament. And they lost like 6 of their last 7 games. And yet, in an expanded field, they'd probably be in it. They would have been in it this year. All right. Mike Jones from The Athletic will talk NFL draft. We'll talk NFL all the way around with our good friend Mike when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. I just noticed something during the break that I did not know. Mike Jones is with us from The Athletic, covers the NFL, at by Mike Jones on X. I think this must have happened right before Thursday night, Mike. But I just noticed that the Eagles traded for Jonathan Grenard. I missed that. Oh, did that happen like right before the draft began?
No, it was during.
It was during the draft.
Yeah.
I don't know how I missed that. 2 third-round picks the Eagles sent Minnesota for a player that essentially will replace Jalen Phillips, right, for the most part.
Right.
And I think is a really good player. When he became a player that Minnesota was looking to deal, I thought because of Durante Jones being here, coming from Minnesota, I thought that made sense. And 2 third-rounders, one in this just past draft and one next year. Now, they did have to, pay him. They just agree to a 4-year, $100 million extension. But I think he's a good player.
Yeah, I mean, he's made a Pro Bowl. It's you get a Pro Bowl pass rusher to go with that defense where you have those guys up front, the monsters that they have in the interior, and like you said, needing to replace Jalen Phillips. I think that it was a good pickup for them. And, they weren't really in love with the guys in the mid rounds, you could tell, because they, were dealing those picks there. But they were able to get a talented, wide receiver, jump up, leapfrogging Pittsburgh, and then adding a veteran for, a pretty affordable rate as far as picks go. And yeah, like you said, you had to pay them, but I think that it'll be worth it, in that Vic Fangio defense.
Yeah, I'm looking. They also added Reek Woolen. They lost. Who'd they lose? They lost Nakobe Dean, Jalen Phillips.
Yep.
Yep. Am I missing anybody else? Look, that defense still, I consider Vic Fangio to be the elite of the, at the top of the list in terms of coordinators. Right. They've had, to that, they've had the talent there. And yet, I think people are looking at Philadelphia like this could be a step back year. They just became the first team to repeat as NFC East champs since they did it back in 2003, 2004 with Andy Reid. And I think there's this sense that Philadelphia is going to step back and that there's turmoil with Jalen Hurts. How do you see that team right now?
I still think that they're a team that is probably one of the most complete rosters in the division for sure. I have questions about the offensive coordinator, Sean Mannion, who has never been a play caller. He was, the quarterback's coach there in Green Bay. They're hoping that some of that Matt LaFleur, Shanahan tree magic rubs off on him. It's another year of having to learn another offense for Jalen Hurts. So that's, kind of disappointing for him. But they were in a situation last year where they had to move on from Pagula, and, he was not a good offensive coordinator. The thing that Patelia, it's just, we'll see. This could be I don't want to say make or break year for Nick Sirianni, but the pressure has definitely got to be mounting here. He's always been able to manage these guys, but it's always like he's holding them together. We'll see what's going to happen with A.J. Brown. I imagine he's going to wind up being dealt there. But they've got enough talent to be able to win this division again. Again, we'll see what a first-year offensive coordinator can do, maximizing, Saquon Barkley and Devontae Smith, and, now they've added Lemon, with their first-round draft pick, and getting the most out of Jalen Hurts, finding something that he's comfortable with, because when he's not comfortable, he's a different guy. But when you can find a way to take advantage of what he can give you, he doesn't care about the stats. He was happy when they were winning games and making a march to the Super Bowl, even though he was passing for, 180 to 200 yards a game. But there has got to be, I just felt like they didn't maximize the weapons that they had last year and underachieved offensively. But the talent is there. Their defense, they always draft well on defense, and they mix in the veterans well. So I'm not concerned about that. But the big question is just going to be how this offense works.
Yeah, we're talking to Mike Jones. I did not intend on starting this conversation with Philadelphia, but the Jonathan Grenard thing came up during the break, and I was surprised by it. But now that we're here, Jalen Hurts, you just mentioned it. He's played 6 NFL seasons with 6 different NFL offensive coordinators. Going back to, Oklahoma and Alabama before that, I think it's 8 straight years of a completely different offensive coordinator, and in some cases, a completely different offense. We've seen some of the stories that have come out, that really question his leadership, question his, overall popularity within that organization and within that locker room. What do you think of that situation? Do you think that this is, you mentioned Sirianni, I think that's a given that this is a big year for Sirianni. But how big of a year is it for Jalen Hurts?
Yeah, I think it's big for Jalen Hurts as well. I think that Sirianni may be a little more pressure on that than him. But it's just interesting that, when a team starts underperforming, then all of a sudden the whispers start about this. There was no problems with Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown and Devontae Smith the year before when, Saquon Barkley was running wild and they were making, a march to Super Bowl. But then when you underachieve a little bit, then all of a sudden things, there's tensions and there's whispers and finger pointings and things like that. And look, does Jalen Hurts, is he in that locker room like a rah-rah guy and, trying to, build relationships with everybody? He's not a really vocal guy, but he works hard, and he appreciates guys who work hard. But he also, at the same time, I think he probably doesn't cater to people, that are like when I've been in that locker room when they've won games and A.J. Brown had a catch or two and he's sulking in his locker where, they win games and he was, kind of like on cloud nine because he had 9 catches. Well, I don't think that, that Jalen Hurts appreciates that type of mindset. And so, yeah, were there frictions there with that? Could he have been better in that offense? I think so. But could his offensive coordinator have been better at getting everyone involved and helping him get into a flow? Absolutely. So I don't think it's as bad as what it seems, but it also definitely could have been better as well.
Yeah, I've talked about this a lot with Hurts. I'm kind of a Jalen Hurts believer. I think when he's been asked to make the tough throws, the tight window throws in big games, he's done it over and over again. He was the best player on the field in their Super Bowl loss to Kansas City in 22. I mean, he was unbelievable in that game. He was so good in the Super Bowl against the Chiefs. Now, that was a defensive-led win, but he was great in the playoffs, when they went to the Super Bowl in 24. I mean, hell, right. A.J. Brown literally short-armed and alligator-armed multiple catches and drop balls in the San Francisco playoff loss. But I don't know. I guess it's more complicated than that. But for some reason, I think I've always been in the minority here. I'm a believer in Jalen Hurts' ability to do almost anything if he's comfortable and they need him to do it. But it seems like a lot of Philadelphia people are not. But to your point, it's because they lost in the first round of the playoffs that maybe we're hearing all this. You agree that it's A.J. Brown to New England, that's essentially what's going to happen here, right, post June 1?
Yeah, I mean, unless somebody swoops in here and has a better deal, so like the Rams or something like that, but it definitely seems that all signs do point to him going to New England. And, it'll probably be a welcome thing. They have brought in a lot of wide receiver help. And I agree with you. It's about getting Jalen Hurts comfortable because when he is comfortable, he'll do whatever. He'll tuck and run. He will make the deep throws. We did not see him doing a lot of throwing the ball over the middle. And he seemed like he was not comfortable with this past year, and that was a source of frustration for A.J. Brown. So it's on this new offensive coordinator to help him be comfortable and all those, and figure out what he likes to do, but also how to stay ahead of the defense, because I think that they got predictable as well. But I agree, the guy just goes out there and tries to win games, doesn't care about the stats. But again, you also have to. Kellen Moore was fantastic at, accentuating what he did well and things like that. And they had a big drop off from there.
Yeah. And number 26, Saquon Barkley, had a pretty good regular season as well, which was very helpful.
Until last year, and they didn't use him very well last year, which is bizarre.
Yeah, crazy.
So, if you get that run game going and then you have the play action off of that, that's just going to open everything up for Hurts and the rest of the offense.
What happened real quickly during the draft with the trade into the Cowboys spot, the selection of Mekhi Lemon? Did Pittsburgh absolutely think that they were going to get him?
You know, they did. I mean, he was on the phone with them, and they had said, like, hey, we're going to, you're going to be here. We're going to take you. And then the Eagles swooped in and jumped ahead. And I mean, he was surprised as well. But Howie Roseman is crafty, and they saw a guy they wanted to, these guys behind the scenes, they're making phone calls and they're getting a sense of who's going to take who and when they need to make moves. And Roseman had the intel that Steelers were going to take him. And so they jumped up to make sure that they got the guy they wanted.
Yeah, that would have been an interesting and a far different wide receiver group in Pittsburgh with Lemon. I know they added the Alabama receiver Bernard, but they got Michael Pittman in free agency. They've got Metcalf coming back, and Lemon as the top slot guy would have been an interesting addition. You're expecting Aaron Rodgers to commit to Pittsburgh at some point for another season, right?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, yesterday they put the exclusive rights tender on them so that way they can match anything. Yeah. So I think that they're kind of like, hey man, come on, like stop messing around. We're still in control here. So if you want to play, it's going to be here. And let's just get this thing going.
Talking to Mike Jones. Staying in the division real quickly, what is Dallas going to do with George Pickens?
I mean, we'll see. I mean, this is the thing that we've seen with the Cowboys, how they drag things on and on and on. Now, Stephen Jones said that, that they are not, they're not closing the door on getting a deal done with him. They've got so much money tied up in some of these big contracts that it would almost make sense for them to go ahead and just let him play on the franchise tag. And, I know that it would he's not the most mature guy. And so if he doesn't get a deal, we'll see how he operates in that locker room. But I don't think that they want to reset the market and then have issues with him being paid more than CeeDee Lamb, so that's why I think that they would like to just have him play on the franchise tag. But at the same time, if they can smooth things over and work something else out, they'll try. But, I think he winds up, he's still going to be there. I never say never with the Cowboys because Jerry Jones loves dragging these negotiations out all throughout the offseason. So we're talking about
burned him so many times.
Right. But he keeps doing the same thing again and again. Yeah. But with Pickens here, I wouldn't be surprised if we do see him just on the franchise tag.
If he did get dealt, that's a big blow to them for this upcoming season. Right. The combination of Pickens and Lamb last year was really their calling card to being a competitive team. Their defense was horrendous, as we know. But without him, do they have anybody else other than Lamb?
No, because when Lamb was a little banged up, Pickens, like you said, he saved them. And then now the draft is passed. So I think that, if they could have gotten some, he signed the franchise tag just before the draft. So then that way they could have, if they got what they wanted, they could have traded him. But the draft is passed now. You did not, draft a talented wide receiver. So you kind of almost have to make it work with him. And because the depth there isn't great. And he is, they essentially have two number one receivers, which they need for that offense. And they're hoping their defense is going to be better. And they have potential to be, challenge the Eagles for that division.
All right. Brandon Aiyuk is a big part of the conversation in your town and my town too. And there is an expectation that the odds are tilted heavily that he'll end up being a part of this roster when we get to the regular season. Do you think it plays out that way?
I think so. He definitely can't go back to the 49ers. We don't really hear rumblings of any other teams that are in the mix. He's got ties to here, multiple ties. It's just a matter of, the 49ers keep saying that John Lynch said they're not going to release him. They're holding out, hoping to get, something for him and, get something of quality for him. But if you're Washington, you just wait this thing out because you don't want to give up a ton of money. Not a ton of, value in picks for a player that their general manager has said has played his last game for them. So you be patient. you wait, and you just hope that he is working to get, in shape and ready to go. We saw some pictures there. He looks a little doughy, but, it's time to get to work now. And that way, as soon as he does become available or they do work out a deal, he can hit the field and be ready to go in these off-season practices or training camp or whatever. But if you're Washington, just be patient and wait for San Francisco to finally release him.
Yeah, it was reported a few weeks back that literally they do not owe him $1 until September 1st. That's the next contractual payment. It's a roster bonus or something that they would owe him. So they could conceivably wait until August 31st, which would, put the beginning of the season for anybody that acquires him in a bit of jeopardy. I don't think anybody's going to trade for him, Mike, because no one's going to take on that contract. They're gonna want to just, do a new contract with him that's probably heavy on incentives, don't you think?
Well, they voided all the guarantees in his contract.
But he's got a $27 million base salary for next year, 28 for 2027.
Right. But who you can get, him, because he wants to get out of there, he probably will be willing to, either renegotiate, and spread out some of that money. But yeah, you don't want to. None of these teams, or if anybody else other than Washington is interested in him, you obviously don't want to hamstring yourself against your cap. And yes, he's talented, but you also have to think of your future. And again, you don't want to pay a ton of money for a guy whose track record is a little sketchy. So incentives, yes, would be very wise, health-wise as well for him. So we'll see. Now, if it comes down to it's close to training camp and you're giving up a 5th round pick, like a mid to late round pick for him, I don't think that's bad. But you'll do so. They will talk to his agent and figure out, okay, and come to an agreement contractually what, if it's a new deal or whatever, before they pull the plug on that.
Talking to Mike Jones. Stephon Diggs, what's his situation? I know there's some legal issues out there, but is he going to play football next year for somebody? Because I do think he's interesting for, a 1 year, again, maybe highly incentivized deal, although I think he'd get more guaranteed money for 1 year than maybe even Aiyuk.
Yeah, I think he still is going to play. We'll see where it is. It's probably going to be on a team that he has, been on teams that have fallen short. He's going to want to be somewhere where he can contend. But at the same time, he's not nearly as explosive and as dangerous as he once was either. So he's not going to be able to command what he could have maybe 3 years ago. So it'll be interesting to see where he goes. I haven't heard a whole lot of rumblings about, teams being interested, but that doesn't mean that it's not, because he still can be productive. He had times last year with New England where he was, and there were other times where he kind of just disappeared. He's had a number of injuries, and he's not super young anymore, but I still think we'll see him out on the field this year somewhere.
All right. What were you impressed with, as it relates to last weekend? Who did you think did a nice job?
I thought the Browns did a really good job. They traded down a couple times. They added more picks. They checked a lot of boxes, getting help for their offensive line. Day one starter, at tackle. Then they got 2 wide receivers. They had the worst production in the league at wide receiver, and they got 2 receivers that can really help them. And then they added some pieces defensively. They did well. I thought Baltimore did well. You have 11 picks, and you got a guard. You really needed help in the interior of your offensive line. They got some receiver help, which they definitely needed. To go with Zay Flowers for Lamar Jackson, some help for their secondary. So they met a lot of needs. I'm really intrigued to see, how things play out here in Washington. You get a linebacker with that kind of size and range and athleticism. I'm very, I want to see what that development's like. And you imagine him going with Frankie Louvu on the inside of that defense and the way that they can, move those guys around, that athleticism. I think it could be exciting to see as as Styles develops, and so we'll see what happens. But there was, a number. This draft didn't have a bunch of huge, fireworks, but there were teams that just plugged holes, checked off boxes, and those were three that were pretty, that stood out. Obviously, Philadelphia's was good, and so we'll see how it all plays out, but definitely intriguing.
It's interesting. The first team you mentioned, it just made me think of Andrew Berry, their general manager, who's been there now for a while. I mean, you can tell me exactly how long he's been there, but he was with Philadelphia, I remember, before. I'm going to say he's been there at least 4 or 5 years. And the teams have been terrible. They're considered to be one of the worst franchises in the sport. And yet people like him. Like, they think he is a decent GM. Am I right about that?
No, he is regarded as a smart GM. The problem has been ownership, and at times the head coach. I mean, look, they had Baker Mayfield there, and Kevin Stefanski, wasn't enamored with him, and so then Baker Mayfield, was out, and that's a guy who's balling and has been, very, instrumental in Tampa Bay continually being in the playoff hunt the last 3 years. And then they gave all that money to Deshaun Watson, when I know that was more ownership than the front office. But Andrew Berry does a good job as far as drafting and filling needs.
The Watson deal and the Watson contract was just a massive, albatross. It really,
right. That was just
and that was the owner's call, right?
Right. Exactly. Yeah. And so, I mean, I had talked to someone in that front office a month or so before, and there was not a strong amount of support in that front office for getting Deshaun Watson. And then all of a sudden they give him that massive, fully guaranteed $230 million deal. That was above them. That was not Andrew Berry's call. But Jimmy Haslam thought that would be the kind of splash move that they needed. And it's been awful. And it's, still setting their franchise back. They still have him and they can't trade him. And, I think it's like 50 something million. Then he might not even, they say he's going to compete for that starting job. Maybe Todd Monken can help him get his career back on track, but it's just an awful move. Unless they would win a Super Bowl, there's no way that it'll ever be validated as a good move. And it's unfortunate that Andrew Berry, that's like a mark on his record, but I think everybody understands that was more Haslam than anything.
Yeah. Talking to Mike Jones from The Athletic. Real quickly, just a couple of things from around the league. Russell Wilson is going to sign with the Jets potentially to be Geno Smith's backup. I mean, he just wants to keep playing. I guess as long as the city he's playing in is a decent city. But that seems to be on the verge of happening.
Yeah, I don't know if you follow the Savannah Bananas. But Russell Wilson made an appearance for that baseball team and looked very, very like a dad who hadn't touched a gym in like 3 years.
Yeah.
Russell Wilson does not look like an NFL quarterback right now. And I know, you could get yourself in shape, but if you are still viewing yourself as a high-level quarterback, you don't let yourself get out of shape even in the offseason like that. I don't know what Russell Wilson has left. When I was talking to people in advance of free agency, Cousins was out there, Wilson was out there, Tua was out there, and I was asking about those three guys, and there was not a single person that said that there were, even with his injury history, people were saying, they would take Tua over Russell Wilson, or they would definitely take Cousins over Russell Wilson. I don't know that he's got much left in the tank. I mean,
I don't either. I thought they should have played Jameis Winston instead of him when Dart, got hurt, or before Dart played.
I agree with you. He's not a bad guy, but I just don't know what you're getting from him as your backup. Even just why? Might as well. I know, if Geno gets hurt, you would like a veteran to kind of step in there, but I feel like you can get some guys that are more productive because he doesn't have his athleticism anymore. That's really what kind of opened things up for him when he was younger, being able to scramble, extend plays. He doesn't like making throws over the middle because he can hardly see over the middle. It's just I don't
He
understand.
can't see over the middle. That's going to be the issue
No.
with Kyler Murray in Minnesota. He just can't see
But
over the line of scrimmage. I don't get it. Real
But I
real
think
quickly.
they have the creativity though.
Yeah,
in
that's fair.
Minnesota
That's fair.
But
Yeah.
Wilson's got no quickness left.
Yeah. By the way, I would bet that if the opportunity for Russell Wilson, considering who his wife is, if the opportunity were, let's just say in Jacksonville, there's no chance. At this point,
No
it's
way.
either New York or LA, and that's it.
Yeah,
and he
exactly.
yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so you mentioned Kirk in Vegas. Do you think there's a chance that Kubiak is being sincere about sitting Mendoza for most of, if not his entire rookie season behind a guy like Cousins?
I think it's possible. I think that they understand that, hey, look, our table is not fully set. They also want him to learn as much as he possibly can and be ready. Now, props to Mendoza for getting with Greasy and to learn this offense is so that way he comes in as prepared as he possibly can. But there's still going to be some learning. And look, they will, if they feel like it benefits them. And look, Tom Brady is in that organization. He set, and so before taking over for Drew Bledsoe when he got hurt. So they understand that, okay, if it's best for him long term, while we still continue to develop people and get pieces in place, I don't think that they'll feel the pressure to start him day one. Now, but say they go out there and they lose 5 straight games, and the offense, is not looking great. I mean, Cousins looked rough at times last year, and then late in the year, he looked like he was better. So if he looks like he does late in the year and they're producing, then okay. But then if they get, to the midway point of the season and this isn't going anywhere, then they'll turn it over to Mendoza.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, 2 more. One real quickly. Referees, will they have a deal before the season starts, or will we be watching replacement refs in September?
I think they'll have a deal. There was really some tough talking, some barking back and forth going on, and they are still making plans to have the replacement officials start training in a couple of weeks, so that way they're ready to hit the fields June 1 in OTAs if they don't have a deal. But the NFL, with all the gambling and everything that's tied to the game now, they know that they can't have calls being blown by high school and Division II and Division III referees. Yes, they have the help from New York and the command center, but they got to get this deal done. And I think that from what I've been able to gather, the tone of the talks have been more productive as of the last several meetings than what they were earlier this offseason.
All right, last one. I know it's early, but now that we're through free agency and we're through the draft, give me a team that didn't make the postseason last year that you feel real confident will make it in 2026. Because we do have a situation where we've got big-time teams who did not qualify because of injuries primarily, Kansas City being one. Detroit didn't make the postseason after multiple years and after having the 1 seed the year before. Those 2 teams obviously come to mind, but give me a team or 2 that you feel really good about here in late April. They're going to go from no playoffs to playoffs in 2026.
I mean, I think Washington can.
Yeah.
I think that they'll bounce back some. Last year was a weird year. Jaden wasn't healthy, and there was just some holes on that roster. They've gotten younger, more explosive. They were, I think that they were a little ahead of schedule year before last, and then last year they tried to kind of go all in on some old guys to help, compete, and it just didn't work. But I think they have a chance of rebounding. I do think Detroit can. I think Tampa can. I think let's see who else is out there. Kansas City, we'll see. They're hoping that Patrick Mahomes is back for the start of the season. He's saying he wants to be, out there from the start. I think they have a chance. When you look at their division, obviously Denver, is much improved. But I still think that Kansas City has a chance to be back in the playoffs.
Do you think there's a chance Mahomes isn't ready for the portion of the season?
I don't know. I mean, the videos that I've seen, he looks like he's moving around really well. And
because
that's
they
like
added
his
Justin
goal.
Fields in case.
Right.
That
Well, but I think the thing is like, look, they've had like Carson Wentz and, other guys, Gardner Minshew, but Justin Fields, let's not act like he's like Jalen Hurts or anything. You know what I mean?
no.
He's
I'm saying
intriguing.
they added a guy who really looked like he couldn't do it anymore last year.
Right. Yeah.
In
No,
New York.
yeah.
I think a good ad for them would have been Mariota, actually.
Yeah, a guy who's a veteran, and but I think that they feel pretty comfortable that they're going to have him there, and if they're not, that they can still position Fields to use his athleticism, and things like that. But they're hoping that they have Mahomes, and the way he's moving, I think so. I think that I still find Justin Fields intriguing. I don't think he's been in the best situation anywhere he's been yet.
He looked lost though last year. He actually looked at times he was playing scared. Yeah.
Right. But that's also the coaching staff. They cleaned all house. So I don't think he was working with, and like they needed to be running the ball a lot and, taking the ball out of his hands and running play action and things like that. And they just, they didn't have a smart approach for him either.
Thanks. Appreciate it as always. Talk to you soon.
Hey, good talking to you. Thanks for having me.
Mike Jones, everybody from The Athletic, at by Mike Jones on X. Here's a question for phone lines 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Through free agency for the most part, through the draft. Give me two teams that didn't make the playoffs last year that you feel strongly will make the postseason in 2026. I actually have a list of 5 teams that I will give you, but I want 2 from you guys on the phone lines, 301-230-0980. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980, the team980.com. We're free and live on the Odyssey app. Don't forget, you can watch this show on our Team 980 YouTube channel. Hit the subscribe button and hit the like button when you get there. Joe Theismann is going to join us at 12 noon. The phone lines are open right now at 301-230-0980. I want two teams from you guys that didn't make the playoffs last year that you feel confident in will make the postseason in 2026. Now, I'm going to give you 5 teams because I really have thought a lot about this, looking forward to games rather than projections on draft picks. Can't wait for the schedule to come out in 2 weeks. But there are some teams that are kind of obvious this year, although one of the obvious teams I don't have on my list. I'll tell you why in a moment. But teams like Kansas City, the 1 seed from 2 years ago, Detroit, the 1 seed from 2 years ago, they did not make the postseason last year. Lots of injuries for the Chiefs, especially a quarterback with Mahomes getting hurt. And Detroit had a ton of injuries on defense in particular. And then, a team like Tampa that had made it the year before, Cincinnati, Washington would be on the list of teams that didn't make it, that, had made it the year before and had done well the year before. Here's my list, and I'll go kind of in order of confidence. Number 1 is Kansas City. I just kind of feel like if Mahomes is back and healthy and plays most of the games, they're going to bounce back. Adding Kenneth Walker in that backfield will be a big deal for them. I like the Chiefs to bounce back and be a playoff team. I can't imagine a Kansas City team with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes missing the postseason 2 years in a row, unless Mahomes gets hurt again, like he did last year. They're number 1 for me. Number 2 for me is Tampa. I think Tampa is going to be a very interesting team to watch. Remember, they had some injuries as well that they dealt with. Bucky Irving, missed a bunch of games last year at wide receiver. They were injured. Mike Evans missed some of those games. Mike Evans is gone now, but they do have Godwin. They've got Igbuka. They've got Jalen McMillan. They added the guy from Georgia State, Ted Hurst, that a lot of people liked in the draft. Offensive line, they were banged up last year. They got to be healthy this year. Defensively, I think they could take a major step. Winfield Jr. back and healthy, potentially. You know what I think of Reuben Bain? Putting him on a D line with Vita Vea and Ashawn Robinson. There's something about Tampa and that team that I could see bouncing back in a big way and winning a NFC South that I think is going to be really competitive. Carolina, remember, won it last year. Tampa, with an 8-9 record, there were 3 teams that finished 8-9, Carolina, Tampa, and Atlanta. And then the Saints were lurking there. More on them in a moment. KC 1, Tampa 2. Washington, for me, is 3. I think it all comes down. Washington and Cincinnati are similar in that if the quarterbacks come back and they're healthy and they play, the season, then they're a much better team than they were last year, just by nature of that. Cincinnati's defense, they've improved for sure. Adding Dexter Lawrence, they've improved that defense to a certain degree. I think Washington, has a chance for a major turnaround defensively. It's still a mystery. It's hard to declare anything. They're just much faster and they're better talent-wise. But the question mark is, does it all fit together and will it get coached well? The Bengals added Mafe. They added Dexter Lawrence. They added John Allen. That's a different team potentially defensively as well. And they come in next on my list of teams that didn't make the postseason last year that I think and feel confident have a really good chance to make it next year. And then lastly, I'm going to give you a team that hasn't made the playoffs in a while. But I thought that they were a really tough, competitive team last year with a rookie quarterback who looked the part. I like the Saints. And I think the Saints and the Buccaneers and the Panthers are going to make that NFC South very interesting all season long. That's a talented team. They're good defensively. They're better in their offensive line. It'll be Shuck on his second season. Kamara's back. Travis Etienne, or Travis Achan, I think he wants it pronounced. They added the kid from Arizona State. We'll see, Jordan Tyson. But what if Tyson's healthy with Olave and Juwan Johnson as their tight end? That's a really interesting team, and I think it's a pretty well-coached team. Kellen Moore's doing a good job there. There's something about the Saints last year that I liked all season long. They were really tough. They were tough out week in and week out. And they're well coached, and they've got some players. I feel like the Saints could be one of those teams. I'm not a fan of the Giants, which are going to be talked about a lot as going from no playoffs to playoffs. I'm just not a believer in Jackson Dart. Give me Tyler Shuck and Kellen Moore and Brandon Staley as the defensive coordinator and some of their players. I think the Saints have a chance to go from no playoffs to playoffs. So my top 5, KC, Tampa, Washington, Cincinnati, and the Saints. I left Detroit out of there. I think we are going to see Dan Campbell sort of exposed a little bit more. He was last year to a certain degree. Look, they had major injury problems for sure. They lost a lot of close games, man. If you go back and look at the games they've lost, they've all been close games. And he gets a little bit wild with the analytics on 4th down and 2 points and the whole thing. I can see another missed playoff season from the Lions at like 9-8 and Dan Campbell being moved on from at the end of 2026. That's my 5. I want your top 2 teams that didn't make the postseason last year that will make it in 2026. 301-230-0980. We'll get Max's top 2 when we come back after this. All right, 301-230-0980, 301-230-0980. Two teams that you are confident will bounce back in 2026. Two teams that did not make the postseason that will in 2026. I gave you a top five. I gave you in order Kansas City, then Tampa, Washington, Cincinnati, and I think the Saints are a team to be reckoned with in 2026. Those are my top five. I left out an obvious one for most of you, I bet. Detroit. I'm not buying Dan Campbell. Every game they lost last year was a close game, and every game they won was a blowout. Man, they lose a lot of close games with him as a coach. I could see Jared Goff starting to decline a little bit. Max, give me your top two.
All right. So the Lions were on this list before we went to break, but now that you've laid it out and we kind of talked about it a little bit in the break, I really do.
I convinced you on Detroit?
A little bit. Well, because I
Okay.
can see the timeline and it playing out, because I can see the Lions getting up there in playoff contention, and then they have one close game against either a divisional opponent like the Packers, Bears, or Vikings, and it just goes south on them really quick. Like Ben Johnson does something to Dan Campbell that he would have done to any other team if he was still working with Dan Campbell in Detroit. And that
Here's a question for you. Who's the worst coach in the NFC North?
Ooh. Yeah,
Dan Campbell.
It has to be Campbell.
Kevin O'Connell, Matt LaFleur, Ben Johnson. Give me all three of those before Campbell.
Yeah.
I love Campbell as a leader, though. I will give you that. All right, so who are your two teams?
So I did want to kind of talk about the AFC or the NFC East this year, just kind of it being a toss-up, because I really think that it's going to play out like the NFC North did this past year. I think we're going to see a lot of teams that are or three of our teams are going to be like 9-7, 9-8, right in that mix in the playoff hunt. But I do agree with you with the Bucks. I do agree with you with the Chiefs. So I'll leave those out. But I think the Ravens are going to have a bounce back season this year. I think Lamar. I think
Yeah. Well, what am I thinking?
Well, with Minter, there are questions. With Jesse Minter, there are questions. But at the same time, it's the Ravens.
I'm an idiot. I totally forgot about the Ravens. Yeah, the Ravens would have to be in my top five.
Yeah, the Ravens are in there for me. Colts
okay,
have big
so you got the
question marks
Ravens.
about. But yeah, the Ravens and the Lions would probably be the two if I had to stand on teams that haven't already been picked.
I don't know why I considered the Cowboys. I considered the Colts because the Colts, remember, at one point were 7-1 last year before Daniel Jones got hurt. But the Ravens, clearly, this is a big year for Baltimore for sure. New coach. We'll see what happens with Jesse Minter and company. All right, two teams that you feel really good about bouncing back from no playoffs to playoffs in 2026. Let's start with Samaj. Samaj, go ahead.
Sorry, we stole your thunder, Samaj.
Good morning, Coach. Thanks, Max, for taking my call. Shout out to Paulie. Hail to the W. Kevin, first of all, Kevin, I'm not going to call you an idiot, but yeah, you were lunching, dude. When you said your five and you omitted the Ravens, I was like, well, okay. But anyway.
Yeah, I'm an idiot.
I'm just going to say you were lunching. You can be hard on yourself.
I was doing more than that.
Yeah. But yeah, man, for me, I just stay right here local, 295 north and south. It's the Ravens and DC, the Berg and Gold, the Black and Perp, the Ravens and the Commanders. Simple as that. I think both of them will very easily, I'm not going to say easily, but very well could make it to the conference championships on both sides of the ledger. That's how confident I am about both squads. Much more about DC than I am with Baltimore, be it that, we got to change the regime in Baltimore. But I'm confident in both my squads getting right back.
Well, I mean, both quarterbacks have to play. Lamar missed games last year. Jaden missed a lot of games last year, and that makes a big difference.
On health.
Yeah,
no doubt. It all depends on health. And just to toggle back to yesterday, I missed my window. You asked what could be missing, what could we add after the draft and free agency. I'm gonna keep it simple with that too. I need my damn logo back, Kevin, at the 50 on the helmet. Thanks for taking my call, fellas.
Thanks, Samaj. Mark in Largo, two teams that bounce back from no playoffs in 25 and into the postseason in 2026.
Well, if you're going to say, I agree with you with Kansas City. If depending upon when Patrick Mahomes comes back, he would have to be there. But I think it has to be Detroit. I agree with you what you're saying about Dan Campbell. Here's the problem. I don't trust the Bears. And if there's anyone that acts like this generation's version of RG3, it's definitely Caleb Williams. And it's not even close. Not even close. And I just think you can't keep winning like he was winning last year, where you go back 50 and throw 100. Tecmo Bowl style or real all-sports football.
He did go back in the playoff game against the Rams 30 and throw 60. That's for sure.
Right. Or Green Bay. I mean, you can't keep winning like that. I'm not buying the Bears. Now, I do think Ben Johnson's a good coach. But the problem is Caleb Williams is so short he can't stay in the pocket. See, no one wants to talk about that. No one wants to say that, but I'll say it.
Caleb Williams isn't short.
It's got to be Washington.
Caleb Williams isn't so short he can't stay in the pocket. What are you talking about?
Well, he's shorter than normal. He's shorter than
Caleb
Drake.
Williams is 6'2", 6'2", right around there. Caleb Williams is not too short.
He's 5'11". What are you
No,
talking
he
about?
isn't. He's not 5'11". What are you talking about?
Look him up, then. Go look him up.
I am looking him up right now. 6'1".
As I was saying,
5'11".
As I was saying,
6'1", 226.
Oh, okay. Yeah, right. I've seen the kid. I stood next to him, and I'm 5'10".
I've stood next to him too.
Okay.
He's 6. I mean, I'm 6'2" and a half, and I thought he was pretty much my height, but he's listed at 6'1".
Here's the reason why I think, Kevin, I'll say this. I think this year could be the best year for the Commanders since the 91 season. I think they've totally remade their defense free agency-wise, and I think getting Sonny Styles completed their reorganization. They did everything they were supposed to do. Okay, on that point. On the offensive side of the ball, I finally understood. And Paulie, I have to give my brother Paulie a lot of credit. Adam Peters is not trying to get Brandon Aiyuk, and I think he wants everybody to think he wants Brandon Aiyuk. I think he did what he did in the draft because he wants to see what Treylon Burks can do this offseason. Mm-hmm. If Treylon Burks plays like he's supposed to play, that's your number one receiver for Jaden for years to come. That's your guy. Because Treylon Burks and Jaden.
I hope you're right. That would be great.
That's the future.
That would be great. He's a bigger target. He's a contested catch guy. So your two teams, just to be clear, to stay on topic here with you, are KC and Washington?
Well, you could say I would say Detroit, KC, and Washington.
Well, that's three teams.
Well, KC and Washington. And Washington.
All right.
Because we don't know what we don't know. Well, I mean Detroit and Washington. Here's the deal. We don't know what Patrick Mahomes is going to. We don't know when he's coming back. So, like you said, we don't know when he's coming back. If we knew, that'd be different. But
Caleb
I agree with you on that. But I do think Washington.
Get out of here, 5'11", Caleb Williams. Now, your statement about not trusting Chicago or not trusting Caleb Williams, I understand some of that. I do, but that is a good roster. That's a good roster, and it's a well-coached football team. I think they're around for a while, and I thought Caleb was a big-time playmaker and a big-time competitive, big moment player last year and just grew as the season went along into that Ben Johnson offense. Joe Theismann is going to join us next. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the team980.com. Hello, Joe, or hey, Joe, as it was said many, many years ago. Joe Theismann's with us at Theismann7 on X. How are you?
I'm good, Kevin. How are you?
Good.
Good afternoon.
So I was thinking, I want to talk to you about what they've done in the offseason and what they did during the draft. Was
Mhm.
there a player that was a draft choice when you were playing that the first time you saw him, maybe it was a mini camp or maybe it was training camp, and you knew that that guy was going to be really good as a rookie or at some point? Now, there weren't a lot of first-round picks during the George Allen days. There were none because he
No.
traded away all the picks. But do you remember in all of your years of playing of showing up at camp and seeing a rookie and saying, wow?
Darrell Green.
Yeah.
Darrell Green was the one that was. There were so many aspects of what he was. Obviously he's not a big guy, but he was so quick, incredible change of direction. Speed was unbelievable. There's a difference between speed and quickness.
Yeah.
Darrell, oddly enough, had both. And when you watched him in practice, like I've said this many times, you've heard me, Darrell Green made me a better quarterback because the windows I had to throw the ball to were smaller because of his closing speed and his abilities. But when he first got drafted, it was like, this is somebody that's special. Obviously, he's in the Hall of Fame and deserves to be there. But just, he had that it factor. He just, humble, hardworking, quick as could be. I tell stories. One day in his rookie year, he slipped and undercut Art in a practice. And
Yeah.
I reamed him. I tore him up.
Yeah.
You do that again, I'll get your rear end. He still remembers the day. I lambasted him, I guess you could say. But
Right.
Darrell was the one that stood out of all the guys that I've seen come and go, and we've had so many. But that was one. He was one that to me was like, this is a can't miss kid.
Yeah. I mean, when you see somebody with that level of sort of speed, and as you said, the combination of speed and quickness, and they are different. By the way, I would say that you were quick. By the way, I don't think you were slow speed-wise, but you had quickness. You had quick hands. You had quick feet. Would you describe yourself that way, as more quick than fast?
Yeah. I was fast. I mean, I ran sub 4.5.
Yeah.
So
I
wasn't a 4.2 guy, but when you return punts, once you go in one direction, most of the people are going the other, so it looks like they're faster. but no, I would say definitely quickness was something that sort of quick twitch kind of guys. The way I basically played the game, and it was the skill set that I had when it came to trying to avoid people and move around.
There is a certain that position, and you always had it. Joe, for those that are maybe younger, really was an athletic quarterback for the day and was a very good, play extender and creator and scrambler, but he would also scramble to throw. It is a lot of feel. I mean, you were an all-around athlete. You played basketball, you played baseball, you played all those sports. But as much as it is athleticism, it's sort of a feel thing when you're, making people miss in the pocket with your eyes down the field.
Yeah, it is. You have to have what's called, obviously pocket presence. You have to know what's going on around you. You can't see it, because if you see the rush, you've got a major problem. And that's
Right.
what you see in young guys today coming out of college. They see the rush. You have to feel it. And you have to feel the direction that you can get to be able to do the things that you need to do and want to do. For me, it was, I was very lucky. I look back on my career, and I was very lucky to play with Billy and Sonny. I was more of a mobile guy. They were very much pocket passers. And I had to learn to operate out of a pocket to fit into the offense from 74 through 78, really.
Yeah.
To be able to do the things that they could do working from the pocket. The instincts that I had to be able to get out of the pocket were just innate to me. But you see, the thing is this is the thing you try and stress with young guys, say like a Jackson Dart, Anthony Richardson, who I don't think can play football. But anyway, athletically, he's able to do things. You have to be able to escape, but then create plays. If they think you're just going to run with the ball, then you're not putting any pressure on the defense at all. If you get outside the pocket and you can gather yourself to a point where you cause the defense to stop, and that's the big, if you watch guys, all of a sudden the defense stops because now they're starting to look for crossing routes or somebody coming back. You can do that. You can be very effective when you're outside the pocket.
By the way, do you like Jackson Dart? Do you see a big future for him?
I do. It's interesting. I look at Jackson Dart last year like I looked at Caleb Williams the year before.
Mm-hmm.
I think with the right disciplines, their skill sets are obvious. Both very athletic, both move around. It'll be interesting to see what happens with Ben and Caleb in Chicago this year in his third year.
Right.
Jackson, I think, is in a very, very good situation in New York. As a matter of fact, our whole division got better, Kevin. The entire division, all 4 football teams, I think, improved themselves pretty darn well during the draft and with the free agent signings that we've seen. But I do like him. I think, John will temper him a little bit, and he'll teach him to protect himself a little bit better. I mean, he's a very verbose individual, and which is fine. I mean, heck, I would have it. But
yeah, coming from you, it's got to be fine.
Yeah, it is fine. But I do. I think he's got a real skill set to be able to do something. He throws the ball very well too.
My one issue in watching him last year, he literally was in the blue tent every single game. Every single game, he took unnecessary shots. Self-inflicted. That's the point. I said, and Caleb went through that too. And like I say, I bring up Anthony because he's the one that's missed a couple of years simply because he's been hurt. He's been hurt on the field. He gets back on the field and he gets hurt again. I've always said this, and I believe this 100%. I don't care what level you play football at, high school, college, professional ball. Your number one responsibility is to keep yourself available to be able to play and practice. It's the only way that you're going to get better. You're not going to get better sitting in a meeting room. You're not going to get better standing on the sidelines. You're not going to get better, just observing. You're going to get better by making mistakes, by seeing yourself on film and saying, I know why I did that. That's why, I look at these 2 young guys playing football. There's a wealth of information that they can learn from having played on the field. And I think Jaden was the same way. You get out there and you know what you can do, you can't do. You know what's expected of you in routes. Robert went through this, Griffin, a learning process to be able to watch yourself. Is the guy open? Could I have gotten rid of the ball? I mean, there's all kinds of questions as you analyze yourself, honestly, to improve. You just mentioned the division has gotten better, the NFC East. I actually had a conversation with Mike Jones from The Athletic last hour just about Jalen Hurts and, all of the discussion about Jalen this offseason, after they had a rough ending to that season, losing to San Francisco in the playoffs, he and A.J. Brown and the turmoil there and some of the criticisms that have come his way. I'm curious as to what you think about Jalen Hurts. Do you like him as a quarterback? Would you want him to be your quarterback?
I could absolutely live with him as my quarterback. I really could. I think he gets criticized somewhat unfairly. There's so much, the Philadelphia Eagles have taken over from the turmoil team from the Dallas Cowboys. They were a team in turmoil for a while. Now the Philadelphia Eagles have all of these so-called issues, and Howie Rosen does an incredible job. I mean, when you look at the people they've added this year, I think A.J. Brown's situation probably will be decided after June 1st.
Right.
What they want to do with him. I mean, he's a talented guy, but he's also a pain in the neck. And I for the life of me, maybe it's me. I don't believe I'm that old school. I think I understand the young guys. I understand football. But how in heaven's name can you sit on a bench reading a book when your team is playing football? And secondly, how the hell does it? I'm sorry, I didn't mean that. How the heck can a coach allow that to happen? I mean, how? That's to me.
That's not old. That's not old school. Okay, that's odd, and it's a red flag. As was in the playoff game, basically short arming 2 to 3 balls that Hurts threw to him against San Francisco. I'm with you. I used to love A.J. Brown. There's something wrong with him.
Well, I don't get into it. The thing is his talent is immense, but there's a part of him that you sit there and say, do you really want this guy in a tough situation in a critical game? Can I count on you? This is the big question. When you look at guys on a football team, can I count on you when everything's gone crazy? Can I count on you to make a play? Can I count on you to be there? Can I count on you to be observing what's going on the field so you can be better as opposed to sitting on a bench reading a book, for goodness sakes? Give me a break.
That would not have gone over well with your teams. No. Although there were some characters that you played with for sure.
Oh, yeah, but we were committed to the game.
I know.
Oh, believe me. You know how I described our guys? Characters with character.
Yeah, I know.
They really were. Absolutely. We had all. I mean, think of the Super Bowl we went to. You know, John in his top hat and tails. The defensive backs coming off in battle fatigues. The Smurfs going to Disneyland. We had a circus.
Just Dexter in general.
I felt like the ringmaster of a circus, and I wasn't without a little craziness as well. So it was fun, but it was but when it came to getting ready to play football, being ready to play football, everybody was committed to one thing. Right, but as far as your question goes for Jalen, I have no problem with him. I think the quarterback position comes under so much scrutiny today. I think he's part of a system, and the system really aids or hampers guys, to be honest with you. And I think some of the things that went on, and like you said, if a guy's not selling out for stuff, it's hard to put. Where do you throw the football?
6 different offensive coordinators in 6 NFL seasons. Jalen Hurts has had.
You have to look at that's where you have to look, Kevin, and say where what is he? He has to learn. Go back to college. Same thing.
No, same thing. Oklahoma, Alabama.
Low season college. Yep. I mean, he's probably been in 8 different offenses.
It's exactly 8 in 8 years.
I think he does extremely well. I think it speaks to his intelligence. He's won a Super Bowl. He's done things. A lot of guys. There's only like 37 of us, I think, that have ever had an opportunity to quarterback a world championship football team. So the number's not a vast number, and he happens to be one of them.
You are too. Let's talk about our team. Before we get to your thoughts on the draft, just because I haven't talked to you in a while, what do you think of this entire offseason? All of the players they've added on defense through free agency, several on offense. Give me your overall take on, how busy Adam Peters and company have been since the season
Adam's
ended.
been very busy. And I think the one thing that stood out to me is when you sit down and identify the needs of our football team, I think Adam has addressed all of them in a lot of very unique ways. Just, you've got 4 of the 5, I think, quote unquote, edge rushers that are on 1-year deals. So you've added players that are playing, you want players that are playing for something. These guys are on 1-year deals. You play well, you're probably going to get a 3-year deal out of this thing. You don't, you're probably going to be gone. So there's motivation there just in the edge rushers alone. The wide receiving core, I think.
Well, Oweh, they gave him a 4-year deal.
Huh?
The guy from the Chargers.
Yeah, but I'm saying, other than that, you're looking at, I think, like I say, 4 of the 5 1-year deals.
Yep.
So you've got guys that are going to be motivated. I felt like the draft was addressed certain needs. I think we're not probably being done with this. And the reason why I think Adam has done what he has done and to admire the job that he has done is this is potentially the year that you have money to spend because Jaden's contract is coming up. So as long as you have a quarterback on a rookie contract, you can do a lot of things. And it isn't a question of quantity when it comes to picks. It's a question of quality because you can find free agents. You can find you take a center in the 6th round. The most really good offensive linemen come from either free agency or they come in late round picks. You just look around the league at guys that have fought their way into positions that were just given a chance. And I think, I look at the draft, every one of our draft picks to me was an excellent choice of a need that we had. You look at the free agents, it's the same thing. We needed to get better on defense. We need to get quicker on defense. The one thing I will say with David Blau as our offensive coordinator, I think it was a great choice for a couple reasons. Number one, I believe we'll run more play action.
Yeah.
We will not put Jaden in harm's way quite as often. Cliff had it, initially with Jaden, when he's running around doing all that kind of stuff, it takes 1 year for the defensive coaches to figure out what's going on. Pretty simple, because they're not a bunch of stupid people. So if you get away with something the first year, you find out the next year it's not going to be as easy. I think we'll be a team that will want to run the football. I think our offensive line has gotten better. Athleticism at the tight end position, I think, is critical in this day and age in football. That's improved. Jaden will be back with a vengeance. The big thing, you talk about Jackson being in the tent. Jaden went through a very difficult physical year last year. And now he's going to have to do things to be able to protect himself. And I think the offense will protect him as well. So it's going to be, I think we've become a very complete football team. And like I said, when you look down, you look at Dallas, you look at Philly, you look at the Giants and us, everybody has done things to improve. Dallas got better on defense. Overall, I think the Giants added some people on defense to make them better. Philadelphia, we know how good they've been. So, and I think we're the ones that nobody really has a feel for yet, but I think people are going to find out just how good we really are.
Yeah, I mean, I think more than anything that's happened over the last month and a half, you just have to have number 5 come back and be available to play all the games, and you're a much better football team because of that. I want to finish up with this because I think the big topic now is what else after the first few waves of free agency and the draft, and all eyes are on Brandon Aiyuk in San Francisco and the belief that he'd like to play here and that maybe Washington would like to have him. Where are you on Brandon Aiyuk?
A lot of the conversation has to do with the fact he played with Jaden. He and Jaden were teammates. You're in a different world now. You're in professional football. You're not in college football. Brandon has had, didn't he walk away from $30 million?
Yeah, he's had between $30 and $40 million of his contract voided. Yes.
He walked away from $30 million. Okay.
Wouldn't you?
What else do I have to say?
That's terrible advice and really poor judgment, isn't it?
Judgment is important. No question he's a talented football player, but there were issues in San Francisco. Like I said, you want people on your football team that are committed to winning. When somebody makes a decision like that, it forces you to take pause and say, what's going on there?
Right.
For someone to walk away from that much money, do you really love the game? Or did you hate San Francisco that much? Do you not like the game? Because believe me, there aren't these kind of paydays laying around out there in the real world. Kev, truthfully, we don't live in the real world. We live in a fantasy world. When we're kids, we dream about doing these things. It's a dream world. It's a fantasy world. The numbers have gotten so big, and God bless every one of them that gets it. I'm not one of those guys that sits around and say, it's not like it was. Who cares what it was?
Right.
Good for everybody out there that has a chance to make money. But when you walk away from millions and millions and millions of dollars, you got to wonder what kind of commitment is that individual going to make to a football team? And believe me, we've got a decent receiving core. I think, with our number 2 pick there, Williams, I think we're, you add to the position. And you can find guys that want to play. You don't have to be the biggest. You don't have to be the fastest. All you want to be is a guy that wants to give you everything he's got every play.
I lied. I forgot. I wanted to ask you just for your thoughts.
You always lie.
I know. I do this with you all the time. Sometimes it's your fault, though. But I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you about Monty Coleman and your thoughts on his passing.
Oh, God bless him. I'm so sorry to hear. I saw Monty last year at one of the alumni games, and he was in a wheelchair, and we all sort of huddled around, and we knew he was sick at that time. Didn't know how sick he was. I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was ALS or not. I'm not sure what it was. But I nicknamed Monty Superman. He had the body of Adonis.
Yeah.
He was absolutely one of the greatest physical specimens I've ever seen. You think of Richie Millard and Neil and Monty and all those guys that played for us at that period of time. He was really special, and to see things in his life physically change and sort of diminish that way was heartbreaking when I saw him a year ago, and his passing. He leaves a great memory. God bless his family. Our prayers go out to them. But he's always going to be in my mind. Every image I have of him is one very simple one. I see him with a cape on.
Yeah.
With a big M cape, not an S cape, a big M cape.
Yeah. Tom Lavero told me yesterday on my podcast, because he wrote a book and interviewed Monty, and he said Monty was used as such a Swiss Army knife kind of a player by Richie in particular. I mean, Richie talked about just how you could put Monty anywhere on the field. He could be your fifth or sixth defensive back, essentially, with number 51 on his jersey. But Tommy said that Monty once told him that he was a little bit bitter about being used that way because he was never viewed as just a linebacker. And when you go through his career, he didn't make one Pro Bowl, he didn't make one All-Pro team, but we know how good he was. But the rest of the league and fans and media people didn't, because he played so many different spots.
And Kevin, there's one other thing that people I don't realize. When Monty and Dexter joined our Redskin football team, they were both gunners on our punt team.
Right.
So you've got Dexter's 255, 255, Monty's 235, and these guys are covering punts. That's how good they were. Dexter and Monty were our gunners.
Right.
So that speaks volumes for his athleticism, his unselfish nature to play the game. And like I said, hopefully, he's out of pain and at peace.
Thanks for doing this. Hit him straight. I'll talk to you soon. Appreciate it as always.
How did you know?
Because I know it's 12:30 either here or it's 11:30 in Memphis or wherever you are, and you're getting ready to go out and play. I know you. Enjoy.
Thanks, Kev. Take care.
Joe Theismann, everybody. Anthony Davis has spoken about the upcoming season, and the NBA, I think, has figured out the anti-tanking formula for the draft lottery. We'll get to that and more when we come back. Kevin Sheehan Show, the Team 980 and the Team980.com. So the NBA has proposed a draft lottery system that would go into effect next year. It's called the 3-2-1 system. This is obviously in pursuit, if you will, of an anti-tanking strategy. We just have had in recent years too many teams trying to lose too many games to ensure that they're in the bottom 3 to 4 teams, increasing their chances of getting the number one pick. And by the way, lowering the floor or increasing the floor of their worst pick. So the 3-2-1 system that apparently, many in the league, the general managers agree with. It still would have to be approved by all 30 teams with a majority vote. But basically what it would do with the lottery is the lottery currently exists for the 14 teams that don't make the actual 16-team playoff field. So take the play-in out of it. Once you get to 8-8 in each conference, those 16 teams are not in the lottery. The other 14, including the teams that lost in the play-in games, are in the lottery. This system, the 3-2-1 system, I'll tell you in a moment why it's 3-2-1, increases the lottery from 14 teams to 16 teams. So that means that 2 teams that actually qualified for the postseasons, 8 teams, best of 7s, but did so through the play-in round, will still be in the lottery. Now, 3-2-1 means 3 lottery balls assigned to a team, 2 lottery balls assigned to a team, or 1 lottery ball assigned to a team before it's put into the hopper and they start getting yanked out. So for the 16 teams that would be in the lottery, here's where they're, going to incentivize not going to the bottom and trying to win your way out of the bottom 3. The teams that would get 3 lottery balls would be 7 teams, and it would be the teams that did not qualify for the playoffs, plus the teams that did not finish with the 3 worst records. The big part of this 3-2-1 is that if you finish in the bottom 3, you're relegated to a lesser chance of landing the number 1 overall pick. You end up, if you finish in the bottom 3, you get 2 lottery balls, not 3 lottery balls. The 7 teams that get the most chance, the highest chances of landing the number 1 pick. And by the way, those chances would be at 8.1%. With 3 lottery balls are the teams that finished with the 4th worst record through the 10th worst record. Those 7 teams would have the best chance. So you don't want to finish in the bottom 3 anymore, but you want to finish in the bottom 7 if you're not going to make the postseason. The teams that get 2 lottery balls, which gives you a 5.4% chance for the number 1 overall pick. There are another 7 teams that would qualify for that, including the bottom 3. So the 3 worst records don't have the best chance anymore. They would be in a group that would have a slightly less chance. It would be the bottom 3 plus the 2 9 seeds in the play-in round and the 2 10 seeds in the play-in round. That would be 7. And then 2 teams get 1 lottery ball, 2 teams, and that would be the losers of the play-in games between the 7th and 8th seeds in each conference. What does that do? Well, it clearly steers teams away from trying to drop to the bottom. All right, so bottom 3, no good. 4th worst record in the league through the 10th worst record in the league, you end up with the same chances. You get 3 lottery balls. So, if you are, in that 11th worst record, situation, well, you're already in the play-in round. So you're trying to advance through the play-in round. But if you got to that 10th spot, you wouldn't have been in the playoff round or the play-in round. I don't know. I mean, I'm just glad the Wizards' final tanking season was this season, in which this rule isn't in effect. They are in position with this last year of sort of an anti-tanking draft lottery system, or I'm sorry, a tanking draft lottery system. They're in the best shape to get the number one overall pick. If this had been, it would have been so Wizards had this actually been put in for this draft and their odds dropped to, behind 7 other teams that had, better records. But good timing for the Wizards to wrap up the tanking portion of their rebuild with the last year of a draft lottery system that's weighted worst teams to best teams. I don't mind it. There's so many different proposals I've seen out there. This seems to be as good as any other. The proposal also includes a few other rules, if approved, would further reduce a team's ability to tank its way into better draft odds. No team would be able to win the top pick in consecutive years or be able to win 3 consecutive top 5 picks. So you wouldn't, qualify for back-to-back number ones or back-to-back-to-back top 5s. Teams would not be able to protect picks through trades in the 12 to 15 slots going forward. And the proposal also includes a sunset provision with the new system expiring following the 2029 draft and requiring an affirmative vote of the Board of Governors to continue with the system that they are hoping to transition to next season. All right, when we come back, there is some news on Brandon Aiyuk. I'll get to that. Also, what Anthony Davis said about the upcoming season in Washington to Craig Melvin of the Today Show. That's next. Some interesting Brandon Aiyuk information coming up here in about 5 minutes on the show. So Anthony Davis did an interview with Craig Melvin of the Today Show. I guess it was Craig Melvin's podcast, and I guess they aired some of this on the Today Show. Anthony Davis has a television show that airs on Turner, either TNT or TBS. It's called Foul Play. It's a prank show. Apparently, it's very good. I've not seen one episode yet, but I've heard that he's good and it's funny. Maybe I'll watch it. We'll see. But he did Craig Melvin's podcast. I'm assuming he did a Today Show anchor's. Look, Craig's from here. Craig's married to Lindsay Zarniak. Craig's, a Skins fan, DC sports fan, the whole thing. So there's some interest on that end, but I'm assuming it's also because Anthony's got this TV show that he's trying to promote. But anyway, long story short, here's the soundbite that is making the rounds on social media. He was asked about the team and what it would be like to play on it in 2026, 2027. Here's what he said.
How hard is it for a really good player to play for a really bad team?
That's the thing, right? So I had this, and everybody knows this. I told the owner this. I told GM, everybody, media. Like, when you're looking at the Washington Wizards, right, from the outside looking in, you're like, everybody's right, But when you get into the organization and see how great of an organization it is, like the owner is amazing. Obviously, the city DC is amazing. We are a very bad basketball team.
Yeah.
For sure. On the flip side, I think it's very tough to go from bad team to like a championship contender. It takes time.
Yes.
And that's with anybody. I mean,
Yes.
it could be a team, who's just won and just like not good. So it takes time. It takes a couple of years,
Okay. I mean, this is kind of what he said in his press conference, a week and a half ago about it's really hard to, everybody knows this was a bad basketball team. And he reiterated the idea that from the outside looking in, this has been a train wreck of a franchise and certainly not a destination for any of the best players in the league. But he found it to be different when he got here. Likes Ted, likes the city, et cetera, et cetera. But he did say, and this was, part of the conversation that we had, a week or so ago when he had his presser about, we still have to figure things out. Going from a bad team to a contender doesn't happen, in the next year. It's a couple of years. Is he willing to stick it out for a couple of years? He's under contract next year, $58 million for next year. And then there is a player option for the year after that. But, it kind of sounded when he talked a week or so ago that would he mind getting traded and dealt to a team that's ready to contend right now? Probably not. I don't think that's going to happen. I don't think that they acquired him to trade him. Now, there was something that the guy from The Ringer wrote over the weekend that the Wizards are a team among several that have expressed interest in Kevin Durant. If Durant doesn't stick around in Houston, and that's seeming more likely by the day, Kevin Durant would have to come with somebody else. There's like a $15 million difference next year contract-wise between Anthony Davis and Kevin Durant. I think Durant's at 43 plus million and Davis will be at 58 plus million. So they'd have to get a Clint Capella. They'd have to get somebody else put into that deal. Personally, there have been times where I would have loved to have seen Kevin Durant here. Kevin Durant is nearing the end here. There is something intriguing about Durant being paired with some of the young players and even a Trae Young in the backcourt, and then having him and Sarr. But Davis and Sarr are interesting to me. Davis and Young are interesting to me. Durant hasn't played 4 of the 5 playoff games against the Lakers, and he's not going to play tonight either. So his availability is, certainly a concern moving forward as he's now a much older player. I'd like Anthony Davis to play here next year. I'd like to see what this team looks like with Anthony Davis fully invested, at least for the year, and hopefully playing 65 games or more. That's the key. We understand that as NBA fans. With him, there is a part of him that, let's be honest, has been painful to watch, whether it's been legitimate injuries or the nicks and knacks that have kept him out. And he is a drama queen when it comes to, getting a finger bent back or a toe stepped on, and you can't count on him to, be back in the second half or to be back the next game. The smallest of things have kept him out for games, plural. But when he plays, he's a top 10 player easily, probably closer to 5 than 10. And the idea that these young guys now need to play basketball in a developmental environment that includes trying to win next year, that's why he and Trae Young are here. Because the development of Coulibaly and of Will Riley and of Sarr and of George and all of the young players, Trey Johnson, that they're going to benefit from playing in games in which the opponent takes them seriously. They're going to benefit from playing in games in which they're trying to win, and it means something to the standings. If Anthony Davis and Trae Young are a part of the team for 60, 65 games next year, the Wizards are going to be in the postseason a year from now. They're going to be in a best of 7 against somebody. I don't think it's a play-in situation. I think it's a 6 seed, and they're playing a 3 in a best of 7, maybe better. It's a big if. Understood. It's a big if about will Anthony Davis play that many games. But I don't think he's playing somewhere else next year. I think he's playing here. I don't think that Michael Winger and Will Dawkins acquired Anthony Davis to trade him. I think they want to be a 45-win team and have meaningful basketball games and then play in the postseason in a best of 7. That's how their young players need to develop. And whomever they draft, whether it's at number 1 or number 2, hopefully no worse than 3, that development as a rookie playing in meaningful games and not being a part of a tanking season will be crucial. So the Brandon Aiyuk news, if you will, Nikki Javala and Matt Barrows. Matt covers the 49ers. Nikki covers the Skins, obviously, for The Athletic. They wrote a story titled Brandon Aiyuk Remains in Limbo. How did we get here and what comes next? Here are some of the items that are newsworthy from this story. Multiple people, Matt and Nikki Wright, with knowledge of the Commanders' thinking, said the team believes Aiyuk could be a boost to the roster, but that Washington can't rely on that given the circumstances. Should Aiyuk become available, Washington would likely consider a short-term, highly incentivized contract. If Aiyuk performs anything like the player in his prime, he'd be a significant boost to the Commanders' receiving core, which currently lacks a proven playmaker opposite Terry McLaurin. But if the experiment were to fail or to fall through, Washington wouldn't lose much by parting ways. Yes, that's the only way to do a deal with Brandon Aiyuk. Short-term, highly incentivized. Here's another piece to their story that's newsworthy. The Commanders, those people, those sources, multiple people with knowledge said that the team appears steadfast in their unwillingness to give up draft assets to acquire Aiyuk. Yeah, you can't. Cannot give up draft assets and acquire him via that way, that path, and also acquire his contract. This has to be off. He gets cut. He decides to sign with you. And it's a 1-year, $6, $7, $8, $9 million base salary, and the rest is incentives. There's something else in this story at the very end as they go through kind of his career and everything that's happened in San Francisco. Off of all of the voided, parts of his contract that the team was able to do because he stopped showing up to the facility, stopped returning phone calls. Kyle Shanahan's quote in here, this may be an older quote because it's somewhat familiar to me. He said, it's something I've never seen in 22 years of coaching. I've said that this situation with Aiyuk in San Francisco really is without precedent in terms of how much money has been voided from his deal without any fight for it. So the end of this story, I'll just read it. So Matt and Nikki write, practically the 49ers' first OTAs practice on May 27th might be an unofficial marker for when the 49ers need to do something. Aiyuk is well-versed at making a spectacle of himself, even if he isn't practicing. He did that during his 2024 hold-in. And even though he wasn't ready to officially practice during his ACL rehab last year, he would still hang out with the wide receivers at the start of practice and run what might be called shadow routes while the group was going through its warm-up and individual drills. Maybe Aiyuk's most effective move is something he failed to do last season, which is show up for work. Yeah, remember, and this is not in this story, I don't think, but this was reported, I think, by Shanahan or by Adam Schefter or someone else a few weeks ago, that there's no payment due until September 1st. Nothing is owed to him. There's no check that needs to be cut between now and September 1st. So August 31st could actually be a date in which they kept him all the way through. But the point they make is once OTAs start, he could turn it into a spectacle and turn into a pain in the ass and just force them to say, all right, just get out of here and cut him. We'll see. I think I mentioned earlier in the show that Ben Standig had reported in his Substack column that the team was and did show interest in Juwan Jennings during, here it is, the Washington has been in communication with Jennings' camp, according to a source close to the situation. That update surfaced after an ESPN report on Tuesday had Jennings visiting the Minnesota Vikings. For now, Washington's interaction appears to be due diligence rather than aggressive pursuit. So, yeah, I think the Juwan Jennings situation is just money right now. What Drew Rosenhaus's agent, what he thought he would end up getting isn't what he has been offered anywhere near it through these first few phases of free agency, but he was visiting with Minnesota, and Ben reported that Washington has been in communication with Jennings' camp. Look, it's possible Washington's in communication with a lot of free agents and agents of free agents. The reporting by Nikki and Matt Barrows it's just intuitive. You're not trading for him. You're not giving up draft assets for him. In part, you want to keep those assets, and you don't want to have any cost to rolling the dice on this player. You don't want it to be a roll of the dice. You want it to be as low risk as possible. Put the onus on him to earn back what he's lost, or at least a portion of it, by proving that he's ready to play football and show up. He wants to play here by all accounts. Washington appears to be interested, but yeah, no trading for him and absolutely no acquiring of that contract. It's got to be 1 year, short-term, highly incentivized. Chris Russell's next. All right, brother.